I stood outside the iron gates of the Ashford estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, holding a birthday present for my 3-year-old granddaughter, Lily, watching through the bars as 50 luxury cars lined the circular driveway. My daughter Emma's in-laws were throwing Lily a birthday party, and apparently I wasn't on the guest list. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, please don't come. Victoria says your truck doesn't fit the aesthetic of the party. I'm so sorry." I looked down at my worn work boots and my 15-year-old Ford pickup, the same truck that had built the construction company that paid for Emma's Ivy League education, the same truck that had driven her to every soccer practice, every piano recital, every moment of her childhood. Now, it wasn't good enough for the Ashford family's aesthetic. My name is Michael Torres, and this is the story of how I fought back against the family that tried to erase me from my own granddaughter's life. Before I share this powerful story about family, pride, and justice, I'd love to connect with you. Comment below with your location and the time of day you're watching this. Are you listening during your morning coffee, your lunch break, or winding down after a long day? I'm curious to know where this story finds you. 3 years ago, my daughter Emma married Brandon Ashford, heir to what everyone believed was a pharmaceutical fortune. The Ashfords lived in a 12,000-square-foot mansion, drove cars that cost more than most people's houses, and treated people like me, self-made construction workers who'd built everything from nothing, like we were invisible. I'd built Torres Construction from the ground up, starting at 18 years old with nothing but a hammer and a willingness to work 16-hour days. By the time I was 50, I employed 200 people and had built half the commercial buildings in Hartford. I'd done it all as a single father after my wife Maria died of cancer when Emma was only 8 years old. Emma had been my world. I'd worked myself to exhaustion to give her everything: private schools, college at Yale, a trust fund that would keep her comfortable for life. When she met Brandon at a charity gala, I was happy for her. He seemed kind, educated, from a good family. I ignored the warning signs, the way his mother Victoria looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her designer's shoe, the way his father Charles spoke over me at every conversation, the way they forgot to include me in wedding planning meetings. The wedding had been my first real taste of their cruelty. Victoria had actually suggested I shouldn't walk Emma down the aisle because my suit, a perfectly nice navy suit I'd bought specifically for the occasion, didn't match the wedding's color palette. Emma had fought for me on that one, thank God. But Victoria made sure I was seated in the back row during the reception, far from the head table where important guests sat. "It's just how they are, Dad," Emma had said when I confronted her after the wedding. "They're very particular about appearances. Doesn't mean they don't respect you." But I knew disrespect when I saw it. I'd spent 50 years in the construction business dealing with rich clients who looked down on the workers building their dream homes. The Ashfords were that type, multiplied by 1,000. After Emma got pregnant with Lily, things got worse. Victoria started making suggestions about how Emma should distance herself from her blue-collar roots. She convinced Emma to stop visiting my modest 3-bedroom house in Hartford, saying the neighborhood wasn't safe for the baby. Never mind that I'd raised Emma there without a single problem. When Lily was born, I was allowed to visit in the hospital for exactly 30 minutes before Victoria swept in with a photographer and announced that immediate family needed privacy for portraits. I wasn't included in those portraits, even though I was Lily's grandfather. Over the next 3 years, my access to my granddaughter became more and more limited. Visits had to be scheduled weeks in advance and usually lasted less than an hour. I was never invited to family gatherings at the Ashford estate. When I asked Emma why, she'd make excuses. "They're doing a small thing, just close family. It's a business dinner, very formal." Victoria has a headache and can't handle too many people. The truth was clear. I was an embarrassment to them. A construction worker grandfather didn't fit the image of the perfect, wealthy family they wanted to project. Standing outside those gates on Lily's 3rd birthday, something inside me broke. I could see her through the bars, my beautiful granddaughter in a princess dress that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, surrounded by children from Connecticut's elite families. She was laughing, playing with toys that would be forgotten by next week, while I stood outside like a stranger. I turned around, climbed back into my aesthetically unpleasing truck, and drove home to Hartford. But instead of drowning my sorrows like they probably expected, I did what I'd always done when someone tried to push me down. I got angry, and I got smart. That evening, I called my oldest friend, James Rodriguez, who'd become a private investigator after retiring from the Hartford Police Department. "Jimmy, I need your help. Something doesn't add up about the Ashford family, and I want to know what they're hiding." "Mike, you sure about this?" Jimmy asked. "Digging into your daughter's in-laws could get messy. They've cut me out of my granddaughter's life because I'm not fancy enough for them. If they're going to treat me like dirt, I want to know who I'm dealing with. Can you do it?" "For you?" "Of course. Give me 2 weeks." Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work every day, managing construction sites, reviewing blueprints, doing the honest labor I'd always done. But at night, I couldn't stop thinking about Lily, growing up believing her grandfather wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy of being part of her life. Emma called once during those 2 weeks, her voice strained. "Dad, I'm sorry about the birthday party. Victoria was insistent about keeping the guest list small. Emma, there were 50 cars there. That's not small." Silence. Then, quietly, "I know, Dad. I'm trying to make this work. Brandon's family is just... they have certain expectations. And I don't meet those expectations." "That's not what I said. But it's what you meant." She hung up without another word. My daughter, who I'd raised to be strong and independent, had become someone I barely recognized, someone who chose her in-laws' approval over her own father. When Jimmy finally called with his report, his voice was grim. "Mike, you better sit down for this. The Ashford pharmaceutical fortune? It's a lie, a complete fabrication." I gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean?" Charles Ashford inherited a small pharmaceutical company from his father 30 years ago. But he ran it into the ground with bad investments and poor management. The company went bankrupt 15 years ago. Everything they have now, the mansion, the cars, the lifestyle, it's all financed through credit, loans, and fraud. My mind raced. How are they keeping up the appearance? They're living on borrowed money, quite literally. Charles has taken out loans against properties he doesn't actually own. Victoria runs up credit cards and never pays them off. They're being sued by multiple creditors. Mike, they're about 3 months from losing everything. And Brandon? Jimmy's pause told me everything. Brandon's been funneling money from various investment opportunities that are actually Ponzi schemes. He's currently under investigation by the SEC, though they're keeping it quiet while they build their case. Mike, your daughter married into a family of con artists. I felt sick. Emma had a trust fund worth $2.5 million money I'd carefully saved and invested for her future. Money that was supposed to keep her and Lily secure forever. Jimmy, please tell me they haven't gotten access to Emma's trust fund. I can't confirm that yet, but I'd check immediately if I were you. Men like Brandon don't marry for love when their family's drowning in debt. I hung up and immediately called Martin Chen, my financial advisor who managed Emma's trust. Martin, I need to know the status of Emma's trust fund. Right now. Martin's long pause made my blood run cold. Mike, Emma came in 6 months ago with Brandon and signed papers transferring full access of the trust to a joint account with him. She said you'd approved it. I never approved anything. How much is left? Mike, I'm looking at the account now. It's been almost completely drained. There's less than $50,000 left. The rest was transferred to various offshore accounts over the past 5 months. The room spun around me. They'd stolen my daughter's inheritance, the money I'd worked 30 years to build, the security I'd promised Maria on her deathbed, that I'd provide for our daughter, was gone. Stolen by the same family that considered me too low class to attend my granddaughter's birthday party. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, the same office where I'd taught Emma to do her homework, where we'd celebrated her acceptance to Yale, where I'd helped her plan her future. And I planned my revenge. By morning, I had a strategy. The Ashfords thought they were smarter than me because they went to fancy schools and lived in a big house. They thought a construction worker couldn't possibly outsmart them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. First, I called my lawyer, Robert Mendoza, who'd handled all of Torres Construction's legal matters for 20 years. Rob, I need you to file papers contesting the transfer of Emma's trust fund. My signature was forged on the approval documents. Mike, are you sure about this? This could get very ugly. They made it ugly when they stole from my daughter. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Next, I called Jimmy back. I need everything you have on the Ashfords, every bad check, every unpaid bill, every lawsuit, every shady business deal. And I need you to find out exactly where Emma's money went. Mike, what are you planning? I'm going to war, Jimmy, and I'm going to win. The following week, I received a manila folder from Jimmy that was 3 inches thick. Inside was a complete record of the Ashford family's financial crimes. Fraudulent loan applications, forged documents, unpaid debts totaling over $8 million, and evidence of Brandon's Ponzi schemes that had defrauded at least 15 elderly investors. But the most damning evidence was a series of emails between Victoria and Brandon, discussing the Torres opportunity before Brandon even started dating Emma. They'd targeted my daughter specifically because they knew about her trust fund. The whole relationship had been a con from the beginning. One email from Victoria made me physically ill. Emma is perfect. Plain enough to be grateful for Brandon's attention, and her father is just a construction worker who won't understand our world. She'll sign whatever Brandon asks her to sign. They'd called my Emma plain. They'd called me stupid. They'd planned this entire thing like it was a business transaction. I made copies of everything and sent one set to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, one set to the Connecticut State Attorney, and one set to Robert for our civil lawsuit. Then I did something they'd never expect from a stupid construction worker. I called Emma and invited her to lunch, just the two of us, at a small diner in Hartford where we used to go when she was a kid. To my surprise, she agreed. When Emma walked into Murphy's diner, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes hanging loosely on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her smile looked forced. "Hi, Dad," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "It's been a while." 3 months, I said. 3 months since I've seen my own daughter. She looked down at her menu. I know. Things have been crazy with Brandon's work and Lily's schedule. "Emma, look at me." When she finally met my eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. "Are you happy?" Her carefully constructed facade crumbled. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. "No, Dad. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy since I got married. Then why are you staying? Because they'll take Lily from me. Victoria's been documenting everything. Every time I'm too tired to attend a social function, every time I fail as a mother by their standards. Brandon's lawyer already told me that if I try to leave, they'll prove I'm an unfit mother and take custody. They'll make sure I never see her again. My hands clenched into fists. Emma, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. I slid the manila folder across the table. The Ashford fortune is a lie. They're broke, they're con artists, and they targeted you specifically for your trust fund. Your money is gone, Emma, all of it. She stared at the folder like it was a snake. That's impossible. They live in a mansion. They have everything. It's all smoke and mirrors. Read it yourself. I watched as Emma opened the folder and began reading. Her face went from disbelief to horror to rage in the span of 10 minutes. When she looked up, her eyes burned with a fury I'd inherited from her mother. They stole my money, she whispered. They targeted me. They planned this whole thing. Yes, they did. And now we're going to take them down. Dad, I can't. Victoria will take Lily. I reached across the table and took my daughter's hands. Emma, Victoria can't take anything from you. She's about to lose everything she has. The FBI is investigating Brandon. The state attorney is building a fraud case against Charles. And I'm suing all of them in civil court for theft and emotional distress. They're finished. But what about me? What about Lily? You're going to divorce Brandon, and you're going to get full custody because his family's going to prison. And your old dad, the one who's not good enough for their birthday parties, is going to make sure you and Lily never have to worry about money again. Emma squeezed my hands, crying openly now. I'm so sorry, Dad. I let them turn me into someone I hate. I chose their approval over you, and that was unforgivable. You're my daughter. There's nothing to forgive. But we have work to do, and I need you to be strong like I know you can be. Over the next hour, we planned our strategy. Emma would continue to pretend everything was normal while secretly working with my lawyer to file for divorce and full custody. She'd document every threat Victoria made. Every time Brandon disappeared for days with unexplained absences. She'd become an informant against her own husband's family. It wasn't going to be easy, but Emma was Maria's daughter. She had steel in her spine, even if the Ashfords had made her forget it for a while. As we left the diner, Emma hugged me tighter than she had in years. Dad, why did you keep fighting for me when I pushed you away? Because you're my daughter and I'm your father. That doesn't change just because some rich con artists decided I wasn't fancy enough for them. Family is family, Emma. Always. That night, I got a call from Jimmy. Mike, I've got news. The FBI is moving faster than expected. They're planning to execute arrest warrants for Brandon and Charles in 48 hours. The SEC has enough evidence to bring criminal charges for securities fraud. What about Victoria? She's facing charges too, accessory to fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, and a few other things I can't pronounce. I smiled for the first time in months. Good. Let them see how it feels to have everything taken away. But the real satisfaction came the next morning when my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Victoria Ashford, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mr. Torres, I need to speak with you immediately. It's about Emma and Lily's future. I'm listening. There seems to be some misunderstanding with federal authorities. I'm sure if we all sit down and talk this through like family, we can resolve everything. I let the silence stretch out before responding. Family? Is that what we are, Victoria? Because I remember standing outside your gates at Lily's birthday party. I remember being told my truck didn't fit your aesthetic. I remember 3 years of being treated like I was beneath you. So, no, I don't think we're family. Mr. Torres, please. Brandon made some mistakes, but surely we can work this out. You're a reasonable man. Reasonable? You stole my daughter's inheritance. You manipulated her, threatened her, and tried to erase me from my granddaughter's life. You're right about one thing, though. I am reasonable. And it's reasonable for me to want justice. What do you want? Money? We can arrange something. I laughed, a cold sound even to my own ears. Victoria, you don't have any money. That's the whole problem. Your house of cards is falling, and there's nothing you can offer me that I want. Then what can we do to fix this? You can't fix this. You can face the consequences like adults. Goodbye, Victoria. I hung up and blocked her number. Within an hour, Charles called, then Brandon, then their lawyer. I blocked them all. They'd had 3 years to treat me with basic human decency. Now they wanted mercy? Too late. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m. I wasn't there to see it. But Emma called me immediately afterward, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and relief. Dad, they just took Brandon. FBI agents came with a warrant. Victoria's screaming at everyone, and Charles is trying to call his lawyer. It's really happening. Are you and Lily safe? I asked, already grabbing my truck keys. We're fine. Brandon didn't even look at us when they led him away. Dad, can you come get us? I don't want to be here when the media shows up. I'm already on my way, sweetheart. By the time I arrived at the Ashford estate, news vans were pulling up to the gates. Federal agents were loading boxes of documents into unmarked vehicles. Victoria stood on the front steps in her silk robe, screaming at anyone who would listen that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, that her family was being persecuted by jealous people who couldn't stand their success. I walked right past her, ignoring her demands to know what I was doing there. Inside, I found Emma in Lily's bedroom, frantically packing clothes and toys into suitcases. Lily sat on her princess bed, clutching a stuffed elephant, tears streaming down her confused 3-year-old face. Lily, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to her level. Do you remember me? I'm your Grandpa Mike. She looked at me with those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of Maria. Mommy's crying. Why is everyone yelling? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and they have to fix them. But you know what? You and your mommy are going to come stay with me for a while. Would you like that? Will there be yelling at your house? My heart broke. No, baby. No yelling. Just love and safety. She reached out her little arms, and I picked her up, holding my granddaughter properly for the first time in months. Emma watched us with tears streaming down her face. Let's go home, I said. We loaded everything we could fit into my truck, the same truck that Victoria had said wasn't good enough for their driveway. As we drove away from the Ashford estate, I watched it shrink in my rearview mirror. The grand mansion that had represented everything I supposedly wasn't good enough for now looked like exactly what it was. A hollow shell built on lies. The next few weeks were chaos. The media coverage was relentless. Pharmaceutical heir arrested in multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, screamed the headlines. Photos of Brandon, Charles, and Victoria in handcuffs were plastered across every news outlet. Their carefully constructed image of wealth and sophistication crumbled in spectacular fashion. Emma filed for divorce the same day as Brandon's arrest, citing fraud, theft, and emotional abuse. With Brandon facing federal charges, his lawyer advised him not to contest the divorce or custody. He signed everything Emma's attorney put in front of him, probably hoping cooperation would earn him a lighter sentence. Meanwhile, my civil lawsuit moved forward. Robert Mendoza was like a shark who'd smelled blood in the water. He filed claims not just for the stolen trust fund money, but for emotional distress, fraud, conspiracy, and about a dozen other charges I couldn't even pronounce. "Mike," Robert told me during one of our strategy meetings, "the Ashfords are trying to liquidate everything to pay legal fees. The mansion's going into foreclosure, the cars are being repossessed, and their lawyers are negotiating with prosecutors. But we're going to make sure Emma gets every penny she's owed before anyone else touches those assets." The federal trial came faster than expected. The evidence was overwhelming. Brandon had defrauded 15 elderly investors out of nearly $3 million through fake pharmaceutical investment opportunities. Charles had falsified loan documents, committed tax fraud, and laundered money through offshore accounts. Victoria had been complicit in all of it, helping to maintain the facade while knowing their entire lifestyle was built on theft. I sat in the courtroom every single day, right behind Emma. I wanted the Ashfords to see me, the stupid construction worker who'd brought down their entire empire. Victoria wouldn't meet my eyes, but Brandon stared at me with pure hatred. The prosecution's case was airtight. They had emails, financial records, testimony from victims, and most damning of all, they had Emma. My daughter took the stand and told the truth about how Brandon had manipulated her into signing away her trust fund, how Victoria had threatened to take Lily away if she didn't comply, how they'd systematically isolated her from everyone who might have helped her see the truth. He told me my father was a bad influence. Emma testified, her voice clear and strong. He said Dad's blue-collar background would hold Lily back socially. He convinced me that cutting my father out of our lives was best for everyone. I believed him because I wanted to believe I'd married into a good family. I was wrong. When the defense attorney tried to discredit Emma, suggesting she was a bitter ex-wife making up stories, Emma pulled out her phone. "Would you like to hear the recording where Brandon explicitly says he married me for my trust fund? Or the one where Victoria threatens to fabricate abuse charges if I try to leave?" I have dozens of recordings. I started making them 6 months ago when I realized something was very wrong. My daughter, who they'd called plain and grateful in their emails, had outsmarted them all. She documented everything, gathered evidence, and built a case that even their expensive lawyers couldn't break. The jury took less than 3 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Brandon got 15 years in federal prison. Charles got 20 years. Victoria, because she'd also been involved in threatening Emma and attempting to fabricate evidence for a custody battle, got 12 years. As they led the Ashfords away in handcuffs, Victoria finally looked at me. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You couldn't stand that your daughter married up. You had to destroy everything." "No, Victoria," I said calmly. "You destroyed everything when you stole from my daughter and tried to take my granddaughter away from me. I just made sure you faced the consequences." The civil case was settled quickly after the criminal convictions. The Ashfords had to liquidate everything to pay restitution to their fraud victims, but Emma was first in line for repayment. We recovered $1.8 million of her original $2.5 million trust fund. The rest was gone, spent on maintaining their fake lifestyle. But the money wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was walking out of that courthouse with Emma and Lily, free from the people who tried to control and exploit them. 6 months later, life looked completely different. Emma and Lily had moved into my house in Hartford, while Emma looked for a place of her own. But honestly, I loved having them there. The house that had been too quiet for too long was now filled with laughter, cartoon shows, and the sound of Lily running through the hallways. Lily and I had developed our own special relationship. Every Saturday morning, I'd take her to construction sites where Torres Construction was working. She'd wear a little pink hard hat I'd bought her and pretend to inspect the work alongside me. The guys loved her, and she loved feeling important. "Grandpa Mike," she said one Saturday as we watched a crew pour foundation for a new community center, "are you really just a construction worker?" I knelt down to her level. "Just a construction worker? Lily, I build things that last. I create homes where families live and buildings where people work. There's no just about it. This is honest work and I'm proud of it. Mommy says Grandma Victoria was mean to you because you're a construction worker." Grandma Victoria was wrong about a lot of things, sweetheart. The most important lesson you can learn is this: never let anyone make you feel small because of how you make your living. What matters is whether you're honest, whether you're kind, and whether you work hard. Everything else is just noise. She hugged me tight. "I think construction workers are cool. You build real stuff. Brandon just lied to people." Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. Emma had started therapy to process everything she'd been through. She'd also started working with a nonprofit that helped domestic abuse survivors, using her experience to guide other women who'd been manipulated and controlled by their partners. "Dad," she told me one evening after Lily was asleep, "I keep thinking about how close I came to losing everything that mattered. If you hadn't fought for me, if you'd given up when they pushed you away, Lily and I would still be trapped in that nightmare. I'm your father, Emma. Giving up was never an option. I know, but I didn't make it easy. I chose them over you for 3 years. I let them convince me you weren't good enough. How do you forgive me for that?" I took her hands, the same way I had at Murphy's Diner all those months ago. "Emma, they were professionals at manipulation. They targeted you specifically because they knew how to exploit your desire to fit into their world. You're not the villain in this story. You're another one of their victims, and you found your way back. That's what matters. I love you, Dad. I'm so sorry it took almost losing you to remember what really matters. I love you too, sweetheart. And you never lost me. I was always right here, waiting." The following month, we held a birthday party for Lily's 4th birthday. Not at some fancy estate with 50 luxury cars, but in my backyard in Hartford. I grilled hamburgers and hot dogs. Jimmy and his family came, along with Robert and his kids, plus half my construction crew and their families. There were no designer decorations, no expensive entertainers, just honest people who genuinely cared about celebrating a little girl's birthday. Lily ran around in a princess dress that cost $20 from Target, laughing harder than I'd ever seen her laugh at the Ashford estate. Emma watched her daughter with tears of joy streaming down her face. "This is what a real family looks like," Emma said, squeezing my arm. "I can't believe I forgot that." "You didn't forget. You just got lost for a while. But you found your way home." That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed in the room that had once been Emma's childhood bedroom, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Grandpa Mike, this was the best birthday ever. Better than last year at the big mansion." She wrinkled her nose. "That wasn't fun. Everyone was fancy and nobody wanted to play with me. Today was real." "Yes, it was, sweetheart. Today was very real." Looking back on this journey, I realized God had been protecting us even when everything seemed darkest. When Victoria whispered her cruel plans at that birthday party, it felt like another wound. But it was actually the push I needed to start investigating, to stop accepting their mistreatment and start fighting back. Don't ignore your instincts when something feels wrong about how family treats you. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion of your job, your income, or your social status. The Ashfords tried to make me feel inferior because I worked with my hands instead of sitting behind a desk. They thought honest labor was something to be ashamed of. They were wrong. This true story taught me that family betrayal is real and devastating. But justice is possible when you refuse to be intimidated. The people who seemed powerful and untouchable were actually desperate criminals living on borrowed time. They thought a construction worker couldn't possibly outsmart them. That arrogance became their downfall. If you're facing a similar situation where in-laws or family members make you feel inadequate, know this. Their judgment says everything about them and nothing about you. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not good enough for your own grandchildren, your own family, your own life. These true stories matter because they show the strength of ordinary people who refuse to be victims. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to disappear when someone wants you gone. I could have accepted my exile from Lily's life. I could have believed their lies that I was an embarrassment. Instead, I fought back with truth and determination. My mother always said, "Miguel, never let anyone steal your dignity. You earned every callus on your hands and every dollar in your pocket. Hold your head high." She was teaching me for moments like this, when powerful people would try to make me feel small. This true story changed my life forever. I got my daughter back, I built a real relationship with my granddaughter, and I proved that justice isn't just for the wealthy and connected. Justice is for anyone brave enough to fight for it. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experience. Have you ever been judged for your work or background? Have in-laws or family members tried to push you aside? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might help someone else who's struggling with similar pain. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories about family, justice, and the unbreakable strength that comes from knowing your worth. Your story matters. Your work matters. And you're more valuable than anyone who tries to diminish you. The Ashford family tried to erase me from my granddaughter's life because I wasn't fancy enough. Instead, they ended up in prison while I got to watch Lily grow up, teaching her that honest work and genuine love matter more than mansions and luxury cars. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well and loving fiercely.